Hello, everyone. Welcome to Drawing in the Style of Charles White. Happy Thursday, and I hope you guys are having a wonderful afternoon. My name is Librarian Grace, and today we are going to attempt some drawing. So if you're up for the challenge, it's going to be about an hour long. You can definitely view this video afterwards as it will be saved on our Facebook page. So if you need to leave in the middle, that's totally fine. You can always access it again afterwards. So today we're going to do some drawing. So I have some sharpened pencils right over here, and I also have an eraser and some paper. So I've got a drawing pad with me, and at first we're going to learn a little bit about Charles White and who he was as an artist. Then we're going to do some drawing. So let me go ahead and share my screen so that we can look at my PowerPoint. Okay, oops. That's the end of my presentation. So, all right, there we go. So, Charles White was an artist who lived from 1918 to 1979. This is him as a young artist. He was born with the name Charles Wilbert White, Jr. And in the background, there's one of his really elaborate paintings. And Charles White was living in a time of much racial injustice. He lived through all the segregation, all the Jim Crow laws, and so much more injustices against Black people. And so as a young artist, he was inspired to create images of other African Americans and to create them in such a way that dignifies them. These images are really beautiful, and he really elevated the position of Black people. Even if it wasn't reflected in society, he reflected it in his images. And he was a really skilled draftsman and printmaker and painter too. And his drawing skills were just out of this world. The proportions, all the curvatures of the body, he got those so perfectly. And so he had a really wonderful eye for observing people and their physical features and putting them down onto paper. And so he made it a point to use African American subjects in his drawings, in his works, and dignify them. And so the one on the left is called Ye Shall Inherit the Earth, and the one on the right is called Work, Young Worker, and they're both from 1953. And this is another one called Oh Freedom from 1956. And he was doing these drawings and these prints as a way to sort of fight against or counteract lots of unflattering and very racist images that were very popular at the time. And so most of the time, if people were to see images of Black people, they wouldn't be very flattering, they wouldn't be very beautiful, they would be humiliating and racist. And so he is fighting against that through his artwork. This one is called I've Been Rebuked and I've Been Scorned, Solid as a Rock, and it's from 1954. And again, you can see just how skilled he was in drawing, and with all these highlights and shadows, and lots of times the backgrounds were just sort of, I guess, neutral, and it puts all the focus on the subject, on the person that he's painting. This is one that we are going to attempt to draw ourselves. It's called Awaken from the Unknowing, and it's from 1961. And the subject is an African-American woman who is learning. She's reading. She's searching for knowledge. And that was unfortunately, that was a more rare subject back then. And so he wanted to elevate not only the status of African Americans, but also women, and African American women as a whole, by painting or by drawing this image. And it also sort of represents his own quest for knowledge as well. He was really inspired by Mexican muralists. So especially in these drawings, you can see the influence of the murals on just the way that he drew these bodies and what they're doing, and the work that they're doing. And he was really excited about the concept of teaching the masses, teaching lots of people through images and through these murals. And so he attempted to sort of take that as an influence on his work. And pretty soon he became a very famous and well-known artist. But like I said before, he was subject to lots of racial injustices. And one of them that I read about was how he had won 2 scholarships to different art schools, but when the administrators of those schools found out that he was Black, they withdrew the scholarships. And eventually he got to go to school at the Chicago Art Institute, and he really persevered throughout all of those injustices. Not only to him, but to his friends and his family. And later on in life, this is a picture of him as an older man, and he became a really world-renowned teacher, really sought after by lots of universities and schools. And he really showed the world that he could make a difference through his art, and he was very passionate about teaching others to do the same. So with that, we are going to go ahead and get started with our drawings. So why don't you also grab some of those materials that I listed before, some pencils, some erasers, and paper, and we are going to start our drawing. So let me share my screen with the drawing. Okay, all right, so here's my piece of paper, and we are going to draw Awaken from the Unknowing, from 1961 by Charles White. All right, so let me start off. Sorry, let me just arrange my screen here so that I can see what I'm drawing, and also so that I can see the drawing itself that we're copying. Okay. All right, so let's get started by sort of mapping out what we're drawing here. And so I've got the table. And I'm going to draw, sort of sketch out with some light lines, the table top right here. Just sort of a straight line, as straight as you can get it. And then we're going to draw some of those papers that this woman is reading. And we've got some folds in the paper. A really interesting composition that Charles White drew out. So we're just doing a very skeleton sketch here. Okay. All right, and then let's start off with on the subject. So sort of sketching out where her arm would be. And obviously I'm not as good of a illustrator as Charles White was, but I'm going to try my best, and this is going to definitely be a challenge. So I've sort of drawn out a skeleton sketch of the woman's arm. This is her hand that's leaning into her head. And this is sort of the top of her head right here, her hair. She's got really thick, beautiful hair. And, okay, I already see that I'm a little off, so I'm going to start over again with that part. And I think I know what the problem is. I think I made the arm a little too short. So I'm gonna make the arm a little taller. Okay, that looks much better, like I have more room to work. Okay, now starting on her head again, that hair. Okay, and just outlines. She's got some curled up bangs. Okay, so I'm drawing the shape of her hair. And then I'm going to start on her ear over here. And I encourage you to get a picture of, to pull up a picture of Awaken from the Unknowing. If you just do a Google search of it, you will be able to find it, and you'll be able to follow along a little better when you're looking at the actual drawing. So I drew her ear, and I'm going to start sort of on her forehead over here. And what's nice about this is that we can always erase a little bit later if we make some mistakes. So I'm going to draw the outline of her nose. And her mouth is sort of underneath there. Okay, not doing many details yet, just going through some of the overall shapes that I see. And we're definitely probably going to do a lot of erasing later and fixing of things. Okay, and then her arm is sort of back here. This is her chest area and her dress or her shirt. And more of her clothing, sort of a collar over here. And I do have to make room for her hand over here, so I'm going to erase a little bit right over here. And I'm going to start drawing the outline of her hand that's resting on the table. Okay, so her fingers are pretty long and slender. Drawing another finger there. And another finger is sort of underneath the table or underneath all the papers in front of her. And that's all that's showing. We only see 3 fingers. And then her wrist is sort of around here, and there's some wrinkles there. Okay. And then some of these papers are coming up off the table. All right. And then here's her elbow. And I'm going to draw the rest of her arm. I'm going to start sort of okay, so her arm, shoulders sort of starts over here. And then it's going to come down this way. But I think actually I made it a little too far out, so I'm going to start maybe around here. Okay, that looks a little better. All right, so then let me start on some more details now. And you can see that I'm just doing light strokes with my pencil. And here's her sleeve. Okay. All right. Then maybe drawing some more of the hair and filling that in. For the hair, I'm going to just do lots of sort of long strokes here. Okay. And she's got a really curled sort of thing going on the top of her head. So we're going to try to get that as well. And remember, it doesn't have to look exactly like Charles White's. This is your chance to create something unique that's yours, the way that you see the artwork, the way that you see the strokes. So this is a really good exercise in observing what you see and putting it down on a piece of paper. There's no right or wrong. But you definitely do need to have patience if you're going to be drawing really detailed drawings. Okay, so Okay. I think I might have gotten, actually, no, I'll keep that part. Okay, so there's a finger that we see, two fingers actually that we see in the back here. So fingers and hands in general and feet are really difficult to draw. So it just comes with lots of practice. These are the wrinkles from her wrist and the rest of her arm. Okay. So now, yeah, we are just continuing to get some of these more detailed things in to our drawing. And let me see. Okay. So continuing to work on the hair. The hair is pretty hard to get. But once we get the hair, I feel like we're almost there. So I might have to move the ear. My ear is not in the right spot. So I'm going to move the ear right over here. Getting some of those details on the ear. Ears are also very hard to draw. So just lots of patience. Lots and lots of patience. And to there's a part in her hair, so I'm trying to work on that too. Okay. All right, so continuing again with the hair. It's got some shorter hairs over here, and you kind of fan out a little bit towards the back. Okay, and I'm probably going to keep on working on the hair all throughout the drawing just because it's quite full. Okay. All right. All right, so then let's work on her sleeve again, or her arm. There's some wrinkles in the sleeve. And her shoulder she's hunched over, so her shoulder is really high up in comparison to her head. And we're just going to keep going with that. Okay, and some more wrinkles on her dress. All right, let's start on the face now. So let's start on this side first. She's got eyebrow, sort of points down on the right side. And I'm going to change to my sharper pencil. And her eyes are looking down at her papers. And her nose, which we drew earlier. And then on this side, there's a trace of an eyebrow that we can see. And we can't really see much of her eye because it's being blocked sort of by the rest of her face. It's got a very strong nose. And then her mouth is underneath. Okay, so I know I didn't get the proportions correct there, but sort of the best I could do at this point. Mouth is sort of curving up like this, and we can hardly see her chin because she's looking down, but there's some of her shirt there. Okay. Sort of blend that in there. And what you could do at this point is start sort of using your finger to make smudges so that there's more highlights. Okay, and I'm going to switch back to my thicker pencil because we're going to need to sort of fill in more space here. And more shading on the dress. So this is a truly difficult drawing because there's not only all these facial features and ears and hands, fingers, but there's also wrinkles in the pages and wrinkles on her clothing. And those are really difficult to get right. But I believe in you. We can do this. We can do this together. So we're just going to keep going. And we're going to keep filling in more shading here. And I'm going to start sort of shading really lightly. Just take the edge of your pencil and sort of color in some areas of her face. Maybe make it darker towards the bottom because that is not being exposed to light. She's looking down, remember? So that is going to be darker down there. There's highlights on her face, so I'm going to leave certain areas of her face a little bit lighter because the light is shining on her face, sort of in the middle area there, so it's a little bit more lighter in color. I'm going to make this part a little bit darker. Certain areas of her forehead are really dark. Okay, there's certain areas that are darker here. And then what we can do later is sort of use our eraser to make those highlights even more visible. So just sort of erase parts of the face, parts of her lips, and her nose are supposed to be really light. I'm gonna actually put more on her eyelid. Okay. All right. Let's see. You guys can probably see better if I darken it a little bit. Okay. Then I'm going to start shading in her arm. Half of her arm is really dark because it's not in the light. You sort of blend it in a little bit. And then her hand as well. Okay. All right. And then, of course, more shading. Lots and lots of shading. Okay. All right. Just keep on working on the shading. I'm gonna make certain parts of her hair really light too. I'm just gonna take my eraser. Sometimes this doesn't work as well, but I'm gonna try it. Okay, so it looks lighter there. Okay, gives it more life when you make certain parts lighter and do those highlights. It doesn't always work when your eraser becomes black like that, but we try. Okay. All right. And I'm going to keep working on the shading. I'm going to darken the edges of her dress, the collar, so that it looks more recognizable. I'm going to start filling in the sleeve here. And then start putting more details on her clothing on the right side. Making those areas really dark, where the wrinkles are and the creases. Okay. It gets really dark in this area here because it's sort of way deep in the shadows behind her arm. Working on those creases again. Doing some darker strokes where we need them. Darker areas. Darker areas over here where the creases are. Okay. And then more shading. Just observe where you see there are darker areas and add some more shading to those areas. And I probably haven't gotten all of the spots, but it's a good start. More shading over here, more shading over here. Shading over here in the back of her arm, where her shoulder is, and then her arm over here. Okay, I know I probably need to do a little more work there, but I think that's good for now. It's a good place to start. And just add a little bit more detail in certain areas of the face, like the lips. Maybe leave some areas for highlights, like her bottom lip is definitely lighter, so I'm going to leave that a little bit light. Okay, and then now we're gonna get, oh, I forgot to do some shading on her hand. So you wanna make sure that the outline of the hand is good. Get some shading on her forearm there. Okay, and if you're sticking with me, very good job. I know it's not the easiest drawing, but it's a really, really beautiful image, and you can definitely show it off to other people and tell them what you learned about this magnificent artist. You do some details on the hand if you feel up for that. I'm not very good at hands, so I'm just going to leave them blank for the most part. Okay, there we go. Overall, you can just make everything a little bit darker too. Okay, now we're gonna work on the papers, and we'll just do sort of a very sketchy drawing of them because they're quite sketchy in the original drawing as well. If you look at the original drawing, it's not as important or emphasized as the character. So kind of goes to show that the person who knows or is seeking the knowledge is more important than the knowledge itself, right? So there's some details there. His paper is folded over. It's kind of hard to draw, but trying our best. Oops. You have to use your eraser a lot, so. But it's fun to sort of guess the proportions of the objects that we see here. And there's lots of pages. It kind of looks like newspapers or something. Okay. And do some more shading there. Maybe shading over here. Some lines on the paper. Starting to look a little bit more like paper, I think, because of the lines and such. Okay, and definitely more lines over here. I'm going to grab my thicker pencil, or not thicker, it's just not as sharp. And we can fill space a little bit more easily. Okay, and I know that not everything looks perfect, and that's totally fine with me. I hope that you don't give up just because you don't like the way one part of it looks. You can always fix it, or you can just embrace the mistakes too. All right, I'm going to call that good for now. And what we're going to do next is the fun part. So I'm just going to do the background. And I'm going to make my background a little bit darker in certain areas. It's really fun. And then this area over here is sort of like a lighter smudging. And it'll probably be much easier with charcoal, and if you have charcoal, you're welcome to use it to do some of that shading in the background especially. But we're going to go ahead and do it with pencil for those who don't have charcoal. All right. And then especially dark on this side and over here. Don't be shy. Make it very dark. Make a statement. And you can make it as, scratchy as you want it to look, because it is pretty scratchy in the original drawing. So, all right. I'm gonna call that good. Okay, so there we go. This is a copy of Awaken from, the Unknowing. And then Charles White, I think he did a small little signature in this area. So you can do your own little signature in that area there. All right. Okay, well, thank you so much for drawing with me. That was awesome, and I hope you had a lot of fun, and I hope you were challenged, and I hope you learned something new about your own drawing skills, about how to draw better, and also about the artist Charles White. All right, thanks everyone. See you next time. Bye.